Here is Howard Schultz, the CEO of one of the most recognizable brands with among the most franchises. I mean, I think it's right up there alongside McDonald's, and it's one of the most common, franchise restaurants in the whole country. Here he is, just straight up saying, everybody, I mean, he doesn't say the D word, Democrats, but it's in Portland, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. He's saying they will not enforce the law. They will not punish crime, so we have to close our stores in these places because it's unsafe. Starbucks is closing stores. I like the egg bites. I'm just going to say it. I'm an egg bite guy. I like those little egg.
I've never had an egg bite.
You've never had an egg bite?
I don't even know what that is.
Clay Travis,
No.
This is madness. They're delicious, man.
I'm not a breakfast guy. Is this a breakfast food?
No,
that
I
you
eat it any time of day because otherwise it's like pastries, and I can't eat flour, obviously, unless I want to get really sick. So the only thing I can usually eat is either banana or an egg bite that I can get there. But, Starbucks, really, it was the beginning of the nationwide coffee chain revolution, became a multi-billion dollar business. One of the most recognizable brands, certainly I would say in the United States, right? And it's now, you see Starbucks all over the world. They've closed 16 stores, which given how many stores they have may not sound like it's that big of a number, but more are coming. And the reason for the stores closing and the reality of those stores is yet another indicator of Democrats are crazy when it comes to crime. They're crazy on COVID. They're crazy on crime. Here's what I mean. Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, has said that the 16 stores they're closing, which are all in Seattle, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Portland, D.C. What do those places have in common, my friends? Who's calling the shots in the mayor's office, as police commissioner, as prosecutors? Oh, we all know, don't we? These are Democrat cities, blue, deep blue enclaves. More store closures are coming despite the fact that they are profitable because of the assaults and the crime. This is audio of the Starbucks CEO, Howard Schultz, telling people in the company that it is, in fact, crime that is closing these stores.
But you all read the press release of the last couple of days about the fact that we are beginning to close stores that are not unprofitable. But we're closing stores as a result of the co-creation sessions that we've had. Almost 60 now, 25 in the SSC and the rest in the field. And we had one yesterday in San Antonio. But in all of those sessions, it has shocked me that one of the primary concerns that our retail partners have is their own personal safety. And then we heard the stories that go along with it about what happens in our bathrooms. The issue of mental illness, the issues of homelessness, and the issues of crime. And Starbucks is a window into America. We have stores in every community, and we are facing things in which the stores were not built for. And so we're listening to our people and closing stores, and this is just the beginning. There are going to be many more.
Starbucks is unsafe now, Clay, in these Democrat cities. I wonder what led to this.
This is what happens when you allow woke viral outrage on social media to change your policies effectively overnight. And you'll remember that there were suddenly a lot of complaints. It went viral. It was trending around the fact that I believe the protocol used to be, Buck, that Starbucks bathrooms were only available for people who were consumers of Starbucks products. And then they said, you know what? Anybody can use our bathrooms. And they effectively turned into drug dens.
Why did they make that decision about anybody can use, that's not just the bathrooms, Clay. You can sit down at a Starbucks and not buy anything.
You never have to buy anything.
Why did they make that decision? We all remember this one?
I think it was because there were a couple of black guys sitting there that supposedly got
They said it was racist
leave,
when they
right?
were asked why, to leave if they didn't buy something. So Starbucks got accused of racism by two people who weren't buying anything, and then they changed the policy nationwide. And at the same time, we had the rise of the BLM movement, progressive prosecutors, and ending of mass incarceration, whereby police forces are told, look, if there's a crazy homeless person who's, throwing trash at people and screaming and there's spittle flying out of his mouth or whatever, it's like, it's no big deal. Just let him be. You don't want the cops to actually make an arrest. You don't want the cops to remove them from a private business. don't want to do that. This is what's happened in these cities.
And I think it's also significant, Buck, at the very beginning there, he said these are still stores where they're making money. They are profitable. It's one thing if you decide to close down because business is not being successful. People don't feel safe, and so they're having to shut down. I mean, they have to go back to the policies that they had for decades before they trended for being racist for a day and destroyed all of these places. And the irony is, I'm sure a lot of the people who are going to lose their jobs at these 16 stores in these different cities are minorities. We are breaking down Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz's comments about needing to close 16 stores over the fact that they're frankly just not safe. And he also, as a part of this discussion with Starbucks employees, said there are going to be more that we are going to have to close. And this was his further discussion about the political consequences that have mostly come from Democrat rule. All 16 of those stores are from Democrat blue cities. Listen.
In my view, at the local, state, and federal level, these governments across the country and leaders, mayors and governors and city councils, have abdicated their responsibility in fighting crime and addressing mental illness. And we are going to have to refine and transform and modernize many of the things we do to meet the needs of our customers in a very changing operating environment in which customer behavior is changing.
Here is Howard Schultz, the CEO of one of the most recognizable brands with among the most franchises. I mean, I think it's right up there alongside McDonald's, and it's one of the most common, franchise restaurants in the whole country. Here he is just straight up saying, everybody, I mean, he doesn't say the D word, Democrats, but it's in Portland, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. He's saying they will not enforce the law. They will not punish crime, so we have to close our stores in these places because it's unsafe.
We just had Art Laffer on, and he was phenomenal. I'd encourage you to go download the podcast if you want a lesson on economics. But he said something interesting. He said, look, I've been through high inflation times before. That's what happened in the late 70s and early 80s. And I feel like, and I bet you feel this way a little bit, Buck, not that either one of us are very old, but time is a flat circle. And to quote True Detective.
I was like, wow, did you just go True Detective on this show?
Yeah, I just went True Detective. And what happens is our country's very young. Do you know what the average age of an American is today? I was looking at this the other day.
No.
38 years old. And
so we are the average American premium. I mean, me more so than you, old man, but close.
Yeah, I'm an old man at 43. Buck just turned 40. But we are very close to the average age of an American. And one of the things you recognize, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are older than us, and you're saying, yeah, speak to the choir here. One of the things you recognize is people forget and end up making the same mistakes that have been made before because times change and we forget what was done that was successful. And it makes sense, Buck, because if you look at a lot of these people who are advocating for the policies that have led to massive spikes in crime, they grew up in an era when crime was not a major threat in their lives. And that's different than if you're 60 or 70 years old out there listening to us right now, you remember the 70s and the 80s when crime skyrocketed all over this country, and you had to fight the battles to ultimately win and drive crime back down in the 90s and the 2000s. And Buck, New York City is a perfect example of this. And you're right at that age where you're old enough to remember, I bet you do, when you're walking through Times Square and it's mostly peep shows and, you know, your parents are kind of covering your eyes and they don't want you to be able to see it. It's not safe. You couldn't go in Central Park late at night. You didn't feel comfortable on the subway. And then you came through that renaissance where suddenly the city became one of the safest in the world.
Clay, I grew up in a New York City where if you went into Central Park at night and were mugged, robbed, people were like, what were you doing in Central Park at night? That's the most famous park in the most famous city in America and probably the world, right? If you went in there after dark, oh, man, you were, it's almost like you were asking for it. Oh, going to the park at night. And then you would also have just as a sense of the psychology of the city, I knew so many people. Anytime I'd be in an adult's house, family member or whatever, everybody had like a nightstick or a big like butcher knife, kitchen knife or something they kept near the bed in case of a burglar. Now you could say, well, that's just that's just sort of helping their mindset, or that makes them feel better. It's not really, but no, everybody did. I knew there were guys who had a baseball bat that they would keep in a certain part of the house, ready to go in case somebody broke in. I mean, that was New York City in the late 80s, early 90s.
And then they fixed it remarkably all over the country. But New York City was certainly sort of that shining city on a hill example. We did two things. We put more cops on the street, and we put criminals behind bars. And over years, as you do that, the number of criminals, and certainly you know well, and a lot of our people out there know, they let police do their jobs. They let them be aggressive in trying to protect people, all these things, right? And then crime got low enough that Democrats were able to turn the crime conversation from we're trying to protect everybody to it's racist what's going on in our country because the people being put behind bars are overwhelmingly minority. They also, by the way, are committing most crimes. And the answer should have been, if Republicans were smart, well, you don't argue that it's sexist because men are the ones committing crimes, right? You go wherever the criminals are and put them in jail.